The smell of rosemary chicken filled Gregory's dining room, but all I could taste was bile. 1 year ago today, Roger died in my arms at 3:47 a.m. His last breath a rattling whisper of my name. Tonight, his memory was being live-streamed to 200,000 strangers. "Mom, sit here." Gregory pointed to the chair at the far end of the table, the one closest to the kitchen door, the spot usually reserved for kids who misbehaved or guests who arrived late. I smoothed my navy dress, the one Roger bought me for our 40th anniversary, and sat down. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. Sienna was already positioned at the head of the table, phone propped on a ring light, that practiced smile plastered across her face. "Hey everyone, Sienna here." Her voice shifted into that bright, artificial tone she used for her followers. "Tonight's a special one. It's been exactly 1 year since we lost my amazing father-in-law, Roger Davenport. We're gathering as a family to remember him." The phone's camera swept across the table. Gregory waved awkwardly. Blake, 12 now and too thin, kept his eyes on his plate. Chloe, 9, glanced at me once, then looked away. My sister Judith hadn't even bothered to show up, sending a text at 5:30 p.m. "Can't make it. Traffic." I'd spent the morning at Roger's grave, planted new petunias, the purple ones he loved, pulled weeds from around the headstone, told him about the leak in my bathroom that Gregory kept promising to fix. 3 months now, and I was still catching water in a plastic bucket. "So, I thought we'd go around and share our favorite Roger memories," Sienna continued, angling her phone to capture everyone. "I'll start. Roger was always so generous. He helped us buy this house, supported my business, never said no when we needed something." She didn't mention the $40,000 he gave them for the down payment, or the $15,000 for her business expenses last year, which seemed to mostly involve ring lights and tripods. Gregory went next, his voice thick. "Dad taught me how to change a tire, how to throw a baseball. He was always there. I remembered those baseball games, every Saturday for 8 years. Roger's knees aching from the bleachers, but he never missed one. I was there too, keeping score in a little notebook, bringing orange slices and water bottles." Gregory didn't mention that part. "Blake, your turn, honey." Sienna pivoted the camera toward my grandson. "Grandpa gave me my first laptop." Blake's voice cracked. He was cool. Roger had taken 3 buses to the electronics store because I'd refused to let him drive with his tremors getting worse. Parkinson's had stolen his coordination 6 months before it stole everything else. I went with him, helped him pick out the laptop, carried it home because his hands couldn't grip the box. "Chloe?" My granddaughter twisted her napkin. He read me stories. Every night for 2 years after her parents' trial separation, when Sienna moved back to her mother's place and Gregory fell apart. Roger and I took Chloe in, gave her stability while her parents figured things out. Roger read Charlotte's Web 17 times because she needed to hear the same story every night. I made her lunch, braided her hair, walked her to the bus stop. "Mabel?" Sienna's eyes glittered behind that phone screen. "Want to share?" I opened my mouth. The words stuck. I wanted to tell them about the night Roger fell in the bathroom, how I'd lifted all 180 pounds of him off the tile floor, my back screaming, because he couldn't bear the shame of Gregory seeing him like that, about the adult diapers I changed without complaint, the vomit I cleaned at 2 a.m., and the bed sores I dressed with trembling hands and tears I hid in the shower. I wanted to tell them about the day he forgot my name for the first time, how he called me nurse, and I pretended it was fine, then cried into a dish towel for 20 minutes, about how I slept in a chair next to his hospital bed for 11 nights because he panicked when I wasn't there, about how he gripped my hand at the end and whispered, "You were never invisible to me." "Mom?" Gregory prompted. "He was a good man," I said quietly. "I loved him." Sienna's smile tightened. She hated when I kept things short, less content for her audience. The dinner continued. Sienna narrated between bites, pointing her camera at the food I'd spent 4 hours preparing. "This rosemary chicken recipe? To die for. I'll link it in my bio." She wouldn't. It was Roger's mother's recipe, handwritten on a card yellowed with age. I'd made it every Sunday for 43 years. "Oh my God, you guys." Sienna suddenly laughed, that high-pitched sound that meant something mean was coming. I just realized. Has anyone else noticed? Gregory looked up from his plate. Blake and Chloe froze. That smell? Sienna wrinkled her nose, aiming the phone camera directly at me. Like, I don't want to be rude, but it's kind of killing the vibe. My stomach dropped. Sienna, Gregory started. No, babe, I'm serious. It's like... She made an exaggerated face for the camera. Old person smell? Like urine or something? The words hung in the air. Poisonous. Final. I looked down at myself. My dress was clean. I'd showered that morning. Used the lavender soap Roger bought me in bulk because he knew I liked it. I didn't smell like anything except maybe the kitchen, the hours of cooking. Get that old hag away from the table, Sienna said, her voice sharp now. The smell of urine is killing my appetite. Gregory laughed. Actually laughed. A nervous, strangled sound, but a laugh nonetheless. He pretended to cough, covering his mouth, but his eyes met mine for half a second before sliding away. The comments on her live stream were already flooding in. I could see them reflected in her phone screen. Sogra vela e o pior. Not the grandma getting called out El Mau. Sienna keeping it real. I folded my napkin slowly, placed it beside my plate. The rosemary chicken I'd seasoned, the potatoes I'd roasted, the salad I'd dressed with Roger's favorite vinaigrette. All of it sat there, untouched on my plate. Well then. My voice came out steady, calm. Your hunger is over. I stood up. My chair scraped against the hardwood floor Gregory and Sienna had installed with Roger's money. $12,000 for Brazilian cherry. I walked to the coat closet. Behind me, Sienna's voice continued, bright and unbothered. Sorry guys, family drama. Anyway, as I was saying about this amazing dining set we got from West Elm, my coat hung where I'd left it, beside Chloe's pink jacket and Blake's soccer hoodie. In the pocket, my fingers found the envelope. Martin Thorne, Roger's attorney and friend of 30 years, had pressed it into my hand yesterday at the cemetery. Don't open it unless you need to, he'd said. Roger wanted you to have options. I turned back toward the dining room. Through the doorway, I could see them. Gregory scraping his fork across his plate. Blake staring at his lap. Chloe's eyes wet with tears she didn't dare shed. Sienna, still smiling at her phone, counting her likes. Mabel, it was Martin's voice from the living room. I hadn't realized he was here, sitting quietly in Roger's old chair. Are you okay? I looked at him, at the envelope in my hands. No, I said, but I will be. I opened it. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Roger's handwriting, shaky from the Parkinson's but unmistakable. My darling Mabel, if you're reading this, someone has hurt you. Badly. I added a codicil to my will. Anyone who publicly humiliates you forfeits their entire inheritance. The house, the money, the investments, everything. Martin has instructions. All you have to do is say the word. I love you. You were never invisible to me. R. Behind the letter, a legal document. And behind that, a flash drive labeled evidence. I looked up. Martin was watching me, his expression gentle but knowing. She live-streamed it, he said quietly. 200,000 people watched her call you that. It's recorded, permanent. My hands trembled. The paper crinkled. In the dining room, Sienna laughed again. Guys, I think she's actually leaving. Wow, so dramatic. Gregory said nothing. I slipped the envelope back into my pocket, buttoned my coat. Not yet, I told Martin. I want to see how far they'll go. Are you sure? I thought about Roger's hand in mine, his last words, the 43 years of invisible labor, invisible love, invisible presence. I'm sure. I walked out into the November rain. Behind me, through the window, I could see them still sitting at the table, still eating the meal I'd made, still performing for strangers. My phone buzzed. A text from Judith. Saw Sienna's live stream. You're embarrassing the family. Do better. I deleted it. Then I opened my contacts and scrolled to Martin's number. My thumb hovered over the call button. Not yet, but soon. The video dropped 3 days after the memorial dinner. I was watering the petunias in my small garden behind the annex when my phone started buzzing. 17 texts in 5 minutes. The first was from Dorothy, my friend from church. "Mabel, honey, are you okay? I just saw something online." The second was from my neighbor, Linda. I can't believe she posted that. I didn't need to ask what that was. I sat down on the wooden bench Roger built 12 years ago, when his hands still worked properly, and opened Instagram. I didn't follow Sienna, but Dorothy had sent me the link. The video thumbnail showed Sienna's face in that exaggerated shock expression she practiced in the mirror. The caption read, "5 things my mother-in-law does that drive me insane, story time." 300,000 views in 6 hours. I pressed play. "Hey, besties, Sienna here." So, I've been getting so many DMs asking me about the dinner situation from last week. She was sitting in her bedroom, the one she'd redecorated last month with $8,000 from the joint account Roger had set up for family emergencies. White shiplap walls, gold-framed mirror, ring light positioned just right. And honestly, I've been dealing with this for years. So here are 5 things my mother-in-law does that literally make me want to scream. She held up one manicured finger. Number 1, she shows up uninvited. Like, we'll be having family time, and suddenly there she is at the door with some casserole nobody asked for. Boundaries, people. I'd brought that chicken casserole because Gregory called me at 7 p.m., his voice tight with stress, saying Sienna had the flu and couldn't cook. He said the kids were hungry. I was there in 20 minutes. Number 2, the guilt trips. Everything is about what she sacrificed. Like, okay, we get it. You took care of your husband. That's what wives do? But she acts like she deserves a medal. My hands gripped the phone tighter. Number 3, she's so needy. Always texting Gregory about tiny things. A leaky faucet? Call a plumber. Your Wi-Fi isn't working? Google it. Like, I'm sorry, but we have lives. I'd texted Gregory 4 times about the leak in my bathroom. 3 months of water pooling on the tile? He'd said he'd fix it this weekend 11 weekends in a row. Yesterday, I'd finally called a plumber myself. $240 I didn't have budgeted. Number 4, the smell thing. I'm just being honest, guys. Old people have a smell. It's not her fault, but I shouldn't have to suffer through family dinners holding my breath. The comments were already flooding in. "Girl, yes, my mill is the same. You're so brave for saying this. The smell thing is so real, OMG. Why do old people think they can just invade our space?" And number 5, Sienna paused for dramatic effect. She lives in our backyard, literally, in the little annex Roger built, and she acts like she owns the place, always watching us through the windows, commenting on how we parent, judging our choices. Roger built the annex for his mother, actually, when she got too frail to live alone but too proud for a nursing home. After she died, Roger soundproofed it, installed a small kitchen and bathroom, painted it sage green because I told him once I liked that color. "For you," he'd said, "when I'm gone. So you're close to Gregory but still have your space." I'd moved in 4 months after his funeral. The house we'd shared for 43 years was too empty, too full of ghosts. "Anyway," Sienna concluded, "I love her, obviously. She's family. But sometimes you just need to vent, you know?" The video ended. 400,000 views now. 7,000 comments. My phone rang. Gregory's name flashed on the screen. "Mom," his voice was careful. Too careful. "Did you see it?" "I saw it. Look, she didn't mean anything by it. It's just her job. Content creation. She has to post things that get engagement. She called me needy. She said I smell. She told 200,000 people I'm invading your space. She's exaggerating for the camera, you know how it is." "No," I said quietly. "I don't." Silence stretched between us. In the background, I could hear Sienna's laugh, bright and false. "Mom, can you not make this a big thing? She's under a lot of stress with her brand deals and I'm living in your backyard, Gregory. I'm 65 years old, and I'm living in a shed because you said I'd always have a place here, that this was my home too. It's not a shed. Your father built it so I wouldn't be alone, so I could be near you, near Blake and Chloe." My voice cracked. "He wanted me close to family. You are close to family, am I? He didn't answer. I have to go, he said finally. Blake has soccer practice. He hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone in my hands. The petunias Roger and I planted together were blooming. Purple and white, his mother's favorite colors. I'd watered them every day for 12 years. That evening, Sienna posted again. This time it was a video of Gregory. They were sitting on their deck, the expensive teak furniture Roger bought them for Christmas 2 years ago. Sunset lighting, wine glasses. The caption, "Date night with my love," with a surprise guest appearance. I watched it. Sienna started. Okay, so people have been asking about the mother-in-law situation. Babe, you want to weigh in? Gregory looked uncomfortable. He took a sip of wine. I mean, Mom is. She's a lot sometimes. Sienna laughed. See? Even he admits it. She means well, Gregory continued. And for a second I thought he might defend me. But yeah, she can be kind of. He made a vague gesture. You know. Clingy? Sienna supplied. I wasn't going to say that. But it's true, right? Always texting you. Always needing something fixed. Always inserting herself into our family stuff. Gregory laughed. Actually laughed. Remember when she tried to give Chloe that doll for her birthday? The creepy old one? Oh my God, yes. The one from like 1950 or whatever. With the dead eyes. That doll had been mine when I was Chloe's age. My mother gave it to me before she died. It was one of 3 things I owned that had belonged to her. I'd dressed it up, fixed its hair, wanted to pass it down. Chloe had opened it at her party, looked at Sienna, then said, "Thanks, Grandma, but I like modern toys." Sienna had posted about it later. When your MIL gives your daughter a haunted doll, the video continued. They talked about my cooking, always too salty, my texts, so many texts, my presence, like, she's always just there. 600,000 views. I turned off my phone. The next morning I found a package on my doorstep. Plain brown box, no return address. Inside, 3 glossy brochures for assisted living facilities. Pine Ridge Senior Community, Sunset Haven Retirement Home, Golden Years Residence. Someone had circled certain paragraphs in red marker. 24-hour nursing care for residents who need assistance with daily activities. Memory care units for residents experiencing cognitive decline. Secure environments for residents who wander. On a post-it note in handwriting I didn't recognize. Just some options to think about. S. My hands shook as I carried the box inside. The bathroom leak had gotten worse. The bucket was overflowing. I emptied it, put it back, watched water drip steadily into the plastic. My phone buzzed. A text from Judith. Saw Sienna's videos. She's not wrong, you know. You do lean on Gregory too much. Maybe it's time to think about other living situations. I typed out a response 3 times, deleted it 3 times. Finally, Roger wanted me here. Judith's reply came immediately. Roger's dead. Things change. I set the phone down and walked to the window. From here, I could see into Gregory's kitchen. Sienna was making smoothies, her phone propped up on the counter. Recording. Always recording. Blake came downstairs in his soccer uniform. He looked toward the annex, saw me standing there, then quickly looked away. Chloe appeared next, her backpack covered in pins and patches. She used to run over every morning to show me her outfit, ask if I liked her hair. She'd stopped 3 weeks ago, right after Sienna posted a video titled, "Teaching My Daughter About Boundaries." Gregory came into view. He poured coffee, kissed Sienna's cheek, ruffled Blake's hair. A perfect family moment. I wasn't in it. My phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from a number I didn't recognize. Saw what she's doing to you. You don't deserve it. MT, Martin Thorne. I stared at the message for a long time. In my nightstand drawer, Roger's letter waited, the codicil, the flash drive labeled evidence. I thought about the $300 I had left in my checking account. The retirement money Roger left me was tied up in the estate, controlled by Gregory as executor. Just temporary, he'd said 9 months ago. Until we sort through everything. I'd been asking him to release some funds for 2 months. He kept saying soon. Meanwhile, Sienna posted about their vacation to Hawaii. their new car, their kitchen renovation, all paid for with money from the estate. Roger's money. My money. I picked up my phone and opened the text from Martin. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Not yet, I told myself. Wait. But that afternoon, when I went to use my credit card at the grocery store, it was declined. I tried again. Declined. I called the bank from my car, hands shaking. Ma'am, it looks like the account holder, Gregory Davenport, changed the authorized users on this account. Your name was removed yesterday. That's my account. My husband and I opened it in 1982. I'm sorry, ma'am. According to our records, Gregory Davenport is listed as the primary account holder. He has the right to modify authorized users. I sat in the grocery store parking lot, cart full of items I couldn't buy, and finally let myself cry. When I got home, there was another post-it note on my door, same handwriting. Forgot to mention, we're changing the Wi-Fi password. Security reasons. Hope you understand. S. I crumpled the note in my fist. Inside, I pulled out Martin's business card, turned it over in my hands. Then I opened my laptop, still connected to the Wi-Fi for now, and typed in the URL Martin had written on the back. His secure client portal. I logged in with the credentials he'd given me at the cemetery. There, in a folder labeled Davenport Estate Contingency Plans, I found everything. Video files of every live stream Sienna had ever done mentioning me, screenshots of comments, bank records showing how Gregory had been moving money, emails between Sienna and her financial advisor. Once the old lady is in a home, we'll have full access to the annex. Could rent it out for $2,000 a month easy. And Roger's codicil, official and notarized. Any heir who publicly humiliates, financially exploits, or attempts to remove Mabel Davenport from her residence shall forfeit their entire inheritance, which will instead be distributed to charitable organizations as specified in Appendix C. Appendix C listed 3 charities: Parkinson's Research, Veterans Housing, and the local food bank Roger and I had volunteered at for 20 years. I sat back in my chair. Outside, I heard Sienna's voice, bright and fake. Blake, Chloe, let's make a TikTok. My phone buzzed. Another text from Martin. Ready when you are. I looked at the brochures on my table, the red circles, the post-it notes. I typed back, not yet. I need one more thing. What's that? I need them to think they've won. The Wi-Fi stopped working at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was trying to pay my electric bill online when the connection dropped. I reset the router 3 times, unplugged it, waited, plugged it back in, nothing. Through the window, I could see Gregory's house glowing with connectivity. Sienna was probably already filming her morning routine, posting stories about her green smoothie and gratitude journal. I was locked out. The cell service in the annex had always been weak. Roger used to joke that his mother had picked the one dead zone in Portland. Without Wi-Fi, my phone was essentially useless except for the few texts that occasionally squeaked through. I put on my coat and walked to the main house. It was 7:15 a.m. The kids would be getting ready for school. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder. Through the frosted glass panel, I saw Sienna's silhouette approach. She opened the door 6 inches, phone in hand, filming. Mabel, morning. Her voice was syrupy sweet. What can I do for you? The Wi-Fi isn't working in the annex. Oh, right, I mentioned that. We upgraded our security. The new network doesn't extend to the annex anymore. Sorry. She didn't look sorry. She looked delighted. I need internet access. For bills, there's a coffee shop downtown with free Wi-Fi. Starbucks on Morrison Street? She tilted her head, fake sympathetic. Or the library. That's free too. Sienna, I live here. It's just not possible with the new system. But hey, maybe this is good. Get you out of the house more. Fresh air, you know? She started closing the door. Sorry, we're running late. Blake's got a test. The door clicked shut. I stood there for a moment, staring at my reflection in the glass. 65 years old, locked out of my own grandson's house, begging for Wi-Fi like a teenager. I turned and walked back to the annex. Inside, the silence pressed against me. No email notifications, no news alerts, no messages from the few friends I had left. I tried calling Gregory from the landline Roger had insisted we keep. Landlines never die, he'd said. Always have a backup. It went to voicemail. Hey, this is Gregory. Leave a message. It's Mom. The Wi-Fi situation. Can you call me? He didn't. I tried again at noon. Voicemail. Again at 3:08 p.m. Voicemail. At 5:30, I walked to the main house. Knocked. No one answered, but I could hear them inside. Chloe's laugh. The TV playing some animated movie. I knocked louder. Blake opened the door this time. He looked at me, then over his shoulder nervously. Hi, sweetheart. Is your dad home? He's busy. Can you tell him I need to talk to him? It's important. Blake shifted his weight. He was 12, but suddenly looked much older. Mom said we're not supposed to bother him when he's working. I'm not asking you to bother him. I'm asking you to tell him, Blake? Sienna's voice called from inside. Who is it? Grandma. A pause. Then, tell her we're eating dinner. Family time. It was 5:30. They never ate dinner before 7. Blake looked at me with something like pity. Sorry, Grandma. We're eating. He closed the door. I stood there, hand still raised to knock again, and felt something crack inside me. I walked back to the annex, sat on Roger's chair, the recliner he'd loved, the one that still smelled faintly like his aftershave, and let myself break down completely. I cried for 40 minutes, ugly, gasping sobs that left me hollow. When I finished, I washed my face, made tea, and sat at the small kitchen table. The one Roger and I had bought at a yard sale in 1984. $20. We'd refinished it together, sanded down the scratches, painted it white. My eyes landed on the cardboard box I'd been avoiding for months. Roger's personal effects. The things I couldn't bear to sort through after the funeral. I pulled it toward me and opened it. His watch, his wedding ring, his favorite flannel shirt, still unwashed, still holding his scent, a stack of books he'd been reading, his reading glasses, folded carefully, and at the bottom, a shoebox labeled Mabel in his handwriting. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside, letters, dozens of them, all addressed to me, all in Roger's increasingly shaky handwriting, all dated from the last 6 months of his life. I pulled out the first one, dated January 14th, 3 months before he died. My darling Mabel, the Parkinson's is getting worse. Dr. Chen says 6 months, maybe less. I'm writing these letters because I need you to have them when I'm gone, when things get hard. And they will get hard. I know Gregory. I love him. But I know him. He's weak. Always has been. Not mean, just weak. He'll let Sienna run things, and Sienna only cares about Sienna. I've seen how she looks at you. Like you're an inconvenience. Like you're something to be managed. I'm putting things in place to protect you. Martin knows everything. Trust him. You are the strongest person I've ever known. Don't let them convince you otherwise. I love you. Always. R. I pressed the letter to my chest and cried again, softer this time. I read another, dated February 3rd. Mabel, today you changed my diaper. I saw the look on your face. Not disgust, never disgust. Just sadness. Sadness that it's come to this. You think I don't notice all you do. The midnight checks, the medicine schedules, the way you hide your tears. I notice everything. You've been invisible to them your whole life. The perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect grandmother. Always there, always giving, never asking for anything back. I saw you. I always saw you. When I'm gone, they'll try to erase you. Don't let them. R. The next letter was dated March 21st, 2 weeks before he died. My love, I can barely hold the pen now. This will probably be my last letter. I've made arrangements. The codicil, the trust, the annex is yours for life. Legally, irrevocably. They can't touch it. If they try to force you out, they lose everything. I also set up a separate account. Martin has the details. $50,000 that Gregory doesn't know about. It's yours. Only yours. Martin will release it when you're ready. You've spent 43 years making me happy. Now I'm going to spend my death making sure you're protected. You were never invisible to me, Mabel. You were everything. Wait for the right moment. They'll show you who they really are. And when they do, don't hesitate. All my love, always. Roger. I sat there, letters scattered across the table, and felt something shift inside me. Not just grief, not just pain, purpose. My phone buzzed weakly. A single bar of service must have appeared. A text from Martin, sent 6 hours ago but only now coming through. Mabel, tried calling. Need to discuss urgent matter. Gregory filed paperwork to have you declared incompetent. Hearing scheduled in 48 hours. Call me ASAP. My blood went cold. I tried to call Martin. No service. The call failed. I tried again. Failed. I looked at the clock. 8:47 p.m. His office would be closed. I didn't have his cell number memorized, and I couldn't access my contacts without Wi-Fi. I pulled on my coat and walked to the main house. All the lights were on. Through the kitchen window, I could see them. Gregory, Sienna, Blake, Chloe, playing a board game, laughing, a perfect family scene. I knocked. No one came. I knocked louder. Sienna glanced toward the door, said something to Gregory, then deliberately turned away. I pounded on the door with my fist. Gregory, I need your phone. Nothing. Gregory, please, it's an emergency. The lights in the kitchen suddenly went off, then the living room lights. One by one, the house went dark. They were still inside. I could hear them. But they'd turned off all the lights, so I'd think they'd gone to bed. At 8:50 p.m., I stood there, fist pressed against the door, and realized the full extent of what was happening. They weren't just humiliating me. They weren't just isolating me. They were erasing me. I walked back to the annex, locked the door, and sat in the dark. My mind raced. A competency hearing in 48 hours. I needed to reach Martin, needed to prepare, needed to fight. But I had no internet, no reliable phone service, no way to access my bank account to pay for a lawyer, even if Gregory hadn't removed me from it. I pulled out Roger's letters again and read them by flashlight. Wait for the right moment. They'll show you who they really are. I had waited, and they had shown me. The question was, what would I do about it? I thought about Martin's earlier text, ready when you are, and my response, I need them to think they've won. Well, they thought they'd won. They'd cut me off from communication, from money, from family. They'd filed papers to have me declared incompetent. They'd turned my own grandchildren against me. They thought I was helpless. Tomorrow morning, I'd walk to the library, use their computers, contact Martin, and I'd stop waiting. But as I sat there in the dark, letters clutched in my hands, I heard a sound outside. Footsteps on the gravel path. I held my breath. A knock on the door. Soft, hesitant. I didn't move. Grandma? A whisper. Chloe's voice. Are you awake? I stood slowly, walked to the door, opened it a crack. Chloe stood there in her pajamas, bare feet on the cold ground, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, she whispered. Mom said we had to ignore you, that you were sick in the head, and it was better to not engage. But you're not sick, are you? I knelt down, pulled her into a hug. She was shaking. No, sweetheart, I'm not sick. I didn't want to be mean, but Mom said if we talked to you, you'd manipulate us, that you were dangerous. I'm not dangerous, Chloe. I'm your grandmother. I love you. She pulled back, looked at me with Roger's eyes. Are you going to leave? I thought about the competency hearing, the isolation, the erasure, and I thought about Roger's letters, his protection, his love. No, I said firmly. I'm not leaving. Promise? Promise. She hugged me again, then ran back toward the house, disappearing into the shadows. I closed the door and leaned against it. Tomorrow I'd fight. But tonight, I'd grieve for what I'd lost and prepare for what was coming. I pulled out my phone, stared at Martin's half-loaded text, and typed a response. Tomorrow, library, I'm ready. It took 3 minutes for the message to send, the progress bar crawling across the screen. Finally, delivered. I turned off the lights, sat in Roger's chair and waited for morning. Through the window, I could see one light still on in the main house, Gregory's office. His silhouette moved back and forth, planning, strategizing, preparing to take everything. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Roger had planned better, and I was done being invisible. I left the annex at 5:30 a.m., and before anyone in the main house was awake. The Portland Public Library didn't open until 9, but I needed to move, needed to act. 3 hours of sitting in the dark had crystallized everything. Roger's letters, Martin's warning, the competency hearing in less than 48 hours. I walked downtown in the pre-dawn gray, my coat pulled tight against the October cold. The streets were empty except for a few homeless people huddled in doorways and early shift workers heading to cafes. I found a Starbucks that opened at 6 a.m., ordered a small coffee I didn't want with the $15 I had in my wallet. The barista gave me the Wi-Fi password without being asked. She must have seen women like me before, older, alone, desperate for connection. I opened my laptop, the old one Roger bought me in 2019, and logged into Martin's secure portal. His message was waiting. Mabel, Gregory filed an emergency petition for guardianship, claiming you're a danger to yourself. He cited erratic behavior, financial irresponsibility, and declining mental capacity. Hearing is Thursday at 2 p.m., Multnomah County Courthouse. Judge Barbara Chen presiding. You must be there with legal representation. Call me the second you get this. Thursday, tomorrow. I looked at the clock on the wall. 6:17 a.m. I pulled out my phone and dialed Martin's cell number from the portal. He answered on the second ring. Mabel, thank God. Where have you been? They cut my Wi-Fi, turned off the lights when I tried to ask for help. I just got your message. A long pause. Then, that's going in the report. All of it. Can you get to my office? When? Now. Right now. We have 18 hours to prepare. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I finished the coffee in 3 long gulps, packed my laptop, and caught the bus to Martin's office on 3rd Avenue. The building was old Portland, red brick and tall windows. Martin's practice was on the 4th floor. Thorne and Associates, estate planning, and elder law. He was waiting for me in the lobby, still in his running clothes, coffee in hand. You went running before work? I asked. Couldn't sleep, come on. His office smelled like old books and coffee. Legal volumes lined the walls. Roger's framed photo sat on the corner of his desk, the two of them at a Blazers game in 2019, both grinning, holding beers. Martin gestured to a chair and sat across from me. Tell me everything. Start from the memorial dinner. I did. The live stream, the videos, the brochures, the Wi-Fi cutoff, the bank account, the lights going dark while they hid inside. Martin took notes on a yellow legal pad, his jaw tightening with each detail. When I finished, he set down his pen. Okay, here's where we are. Gregory's petition claims you're incompetent. He has a statement from Sienna describing concerning behaviors. He's claiming you've been giving away money inappropriately. I haven't given away anything. I don't even have access to money. I know. He also claims you've been hostile and threatening toward family members. I laughed, a bitter sound. I begged them to let me use their phone. And he has a doctor's statement. My stomach dropped. What doctor? I haven't seen a doctor in months. Martin pulled out a document. Dr. Richard Paulson. According to this, he evaluated you last month and found signs of cognitive decline consistent with early-stage dementia. I've never heard of Richard Paulson. Neither have I. I already have my investigator looking into him. Martin leaned forward. But here's the thing, Mabel. Even if we prove Paulson is lying, even if we show the judge all of this, the videos, the isolation, the financial abuse, there's still a chance Gregory gets temporary guardianship while the case proceeds. How long would that take? Months, maybe a year. And during that time, he controls everything. Your money, your housing, your medical decisions. The room felt too small suddenly, too hot. But, Martin continued, we have Roger's codicil, and we have documentation of everything Sienna has done. The question is, do you want to use it? What do you mean? If we invoke the codicil now, Gregory loses his inheritance immediately. All of it. The house, the trust, everything. It goes to the charities Roger specified. He paused, including the $3 million in the investment accounts. I'd known Roger had money. But $2, $3 million? Gregory doesn't know about the codicil? No, Roger wanted it that way. He hoped Gregory would step up, treat you right, prove he deserved the inheritance. But he also planned for this. Martin pulled out another folder. Roger also set up the separate account I mentioned. $50,000. It's in your name only, completely separate from the estate. Gregory never knew it existed. I can access it? As soon as you sign these papers. He slid a document across the desk. This activates the account and invokes the codicil. Once you sign, it's done. Gregory gets nothing. But you'll have resources to fight him, to live independently, to rebuild. My hand hovered over the pen. If I sign this, I'm destroying my son's life. No, Martin said quietly. Sienna destroyed your son's life when she turned him into her accomplice. You're just protecting yourself. I thought about Gregory as a boy, 6 years old, crying because he'd lost his first tooth, 12 years old, proud in his Little League uniform, 25, nervous in his wedding tux, asking if Roger approved of Sienna. She makes me happy, Mom. Isn't that what matters? I'd smiled and said yes. I'd been so grateful he'd found someone. I thought about Chloe last night, barefoot in the cold, whispering, I'm sorry. I picked up the pen. Once I sign this, what happens? I file emergency motions today. By tomorrow's hearing, Judge Chen will have all the evidence. The live streams, the videos, the financial records, proof that Gregory and Sienna have been systematically isolating and exploiting you. The codicil activates automatically because Sienna's actions meet the criteria Roger specified: public humiliation and attempted forced removal from your home. And the competency evaluation? I've already arranged for Dr. Susan Morales, a real geriatric psychiatrist, to evaluate you this afternoon. She'll provide an actual expert opinion, not whatever fraud Paulson is. I looked at the signature line, then I signed my name, Mabel J. Davenport. Martin countersigned as witness, dated it, and immediately began making copies. Okay, he said, now we fight. The rest of the day moved in a blur. Dr. Morales evaluated me for 2 hours. Memory tests, cognitive assessments, conversations about my life. She was kind, thorough, and at the end she smiled and said, Mrs. Davenport, your mind is sharper than mine, and I'm 20 years younger. Whoever claimed you're incompetent is either lying or incompetent themselves. While I was with Dr. Morales, Martin's investigator found Dr. Richard Paulson. He wasn't a doctor. He was a life coach Sienna used occasionally, who'd gotten a fake medical degree online for $500. He'd never met me. Sienna had paid him $3,000 to write the evaluation based on her descriptions. Martin filed a complaint with the state medical board before noon. At 2 p.m., I returned to the Starbucks. I needed to see what was happening online. Sienna had posted that morning, taking a mental health day. Sometimes you just need to unplug and focus on you. Self-care talked her boundaries. The photo showed her in a bubble bath, face mask on, cucumber slices over her eyes. Comments poured in. You deserve it, Queen. Self-care is not selfish. You work so hard. Take all the time you need. But there were new comments, too. Different ones. Maybe focus less on yourself and more on your Mael you're torturing. I used to follow you, but this elder abuse stuff is gross. Making fun of old people for content? Get help. I scrolled up. Someone had created a compilation video. Sienna Davenport's elder abuse, a timeline. It had 2 million views. It showed every video she'd made about me, every cruel comment, every humiliation, set to somber music with text overlays. This is someone's grandmother. This is someone's wife of 43 years. This is elder abuse. The comments section was brutal. She's literally bragging about how she treats an elderly widow. Sick. The way she talks about the smell when there is no smell is textbook gaslighting. I hope that grandmother sues her into oblivion. I kept scrolling. Brand deals were falling apart. 3 companies had posted statements. We no longer work with Sienna Davenport and do not condone her behavior. Her follower count was dropping. 847K when I checked that morning. 791K now, losing 50,000 followers in 6 hours. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not quite satisfaction. Not quite revenge. Justice, maybe. I checked her most recent post. The bubble bath selfie from this morning. New comments were flooding in. This, you treating your MIL like garbage for views? How's that mental health day going? Thinking about the elderly woman you torment? Your husband's father is probably rolling in his grave. Someone had tagged multiple news outlets. Portland News, Oregonian News. This is your local influencer abusing the elderly. At 4:30 p.m., Martin called. It's happening, he said. Local news picked up the story. They want to interview you tomorrow before the hearing. Should I? Absolutely not. Let the evidence speak. But Mabel, this changes things. Judge Chen will have seen this by tomorrow. The whole city will be watching. That evening, I walked back to the annex as the sun set over Portland. The main house was lit up, every window bright. Through the kitchen window, I could see Gregory pacing, phone pressed to his ear. Sienna sat at the table, laptop open, frantically typing. Their perfect life was cracking. I let myself into the annex, locked the door, and made tea. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mrs. Davenport, this is Janet Chen from Oregon News Network. We'd like to discuss. I deleted it. Another text, this time from Martin. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we finish this. I sat in Roger's chair, his letters spread across my lap, and allowed myself one small smile. Through the window, I watched Gregory's house. Lights on in every room now, shadows moving frantically, the sound of raised voices carrying across the small yard. They'd thought they'd won. They'd thought I was helpless. But Roger had taught me patience. And patience, I was learning, was its own kind of power. I picked up my phone and typed a message to Martin. I'm ready for tomorrow. His response came immediately. Good, because they're not. I turned off the lights and went to bed. For the first time in months, I slept soundly. Tomorrow, the invisible woman would be seen, and they would finally understand what they'd lost. The Multnomah County Courthouse was built in 1914, all marble columns and echoing hallways. I'd been here once before, for jury duty in 1998. Roger had picked me up afterward and we'd gotten ice cream. Now I was here to fight my own son. Martin met me at the security checkpoint at 1:30 p.m. He was in a sharp navy suit, carrying a leather briefcase that looked older than both of us. Ready? He asked. I smoothed my dress, the good one, pale blue, the one Roger loved, and nodded. They're already here. Courtroom 4C. We took the elevator to the 4th floor. The hallway was crowded with people waiting for various hearings. Lawyers in expensive suits, families in their best clothes, the smell of coffee and anxiety. Courtroom 4C was at the end of the hall. Through the small window in the door, I could see them, Gregory and Sienna, sitting at the petitioner's table with their attorney, a man in his 50s with silver hair and a practiced smile. Gregory looked awful, pale, unshaven, his suit wrinkled. Sienna was put together perfectly, as always, but her phone sat face down on the table. Usually it would be in her hand. Judith was there too, sitting in the gallery. She saw me through the window and looked away quickly. Mrs. Davenport? A bailiff opened the door. Judge Chen is ready. We entered. Every head turned. Gregory's eyes met mine. For just a moment, I saw the boy he'd been, 6 years old, scared of thunder, crawling into bed between Roger and me. That boy was still in there somewhere, buried under years of Sienna's influence and his own weakness. Then his lawyer whispered something and Gregory looked away. All rise, the bailiff announced. The Honorable Judge Barbara Chen presiding. Judge Chen entered. A woman in her late 50s, gray hair pulled back severely, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She sat, opened a thick folder, and surveyed the courtroom with sharp eyes. Please be seated. Case number 2024 PR 8847, Davenport versus Davenport. Petition for emergency guardianship. She looked at Gregory's attorney. Mr. Sullivan, you filed this petition? Yes, Your Honor. Sullivan stood, all polish and confidence. My client, Gregory Davenport, seeks emergency guardianship of his mother, Mabel Davenport, age 65, due to concerns about her mental competency and ability to care for herself. And Mrs. Davenport is represented by? Martin stood. Martin Thorne, Your Honor, elder law. I also served as a state attorney for Roger Davenport, Mrs. Davenport's late husband. Judge Chen nodded. I've reviewed the initial filings. Mr. Sullivan, present your case. Sullivan launched into his argument. He cited the evaluation from Dr. Paulson, describing me as confused, financially irresponsible, potentially dangerous. He presented testimony from Sienna about my erratic behavior. He showed text messages I'd supposedly sent, frantic, incoherent things I'd never written. I leaned toward Martin. I never sent those. I know, he whispered. They faked them. We'll prove it. Sullivan continued for 15 minutes, painting a picture of a confused elderly woman who needed protection from herself. Your Honor, he concluded, Mr. Davenport seeks this guardianship out of love and concern. His mother is vulnerable, and without intervention, she may harm herself or others. Judge Chen wrote something on her notepad. Mr. Thorne? Response. Martin stood, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Your Honor, this petition is not about love or concern. It's about money, manipulation, and elder abuse. He opened his briefcase. I have evidence that tells a very different story. He approached the bench and handed Judge Chen a flash drive. This contains video recordings from social media. Over 40 instances of Mrs. Sienna Davenport publicly humiliating my client, including live-streamed verbal abuse witnessed by 200,000 people. Sienna's face went white. I also have financial records showing that Mr. Gregory Davenport has systematically isolated his mother from her own money, removing her from bank accounts, cutting off her access to funds, and filing this petition immediately after she discovered his actions. Sullivan jumped up. Your Honor, this is a distraction. I'm not finished, Martin said coldly. Additionally, the psychiatric evaluation provided by Dr. Richard Paulson is fraudulent. Dr. Paulson is not a licensed physician. He's a life coach who was paid $3,000 to fabricate this report. I've filed a complaint with the State Medical Board, and I have a legitimate evaluation from Dr. Susan Morales, a board-certified geriatric psychiatrist, confirming that Mrs. Davenport is fully competent. Judge Chen's expression hardened. She looked at Sullivan. Is this true about Dr. Paulson? Sullivan glanced at Gregory and Sienna. The color had drained from Gregory's face. Your Honor, I was provided that evaluation in good faith. We'll address that later. Mr. Thorne, continue. Martin pulled out another document. Finally, Your Honor, I have a codicil to Roger Davenport's will, executed 6 weeks before his death and properly notarized. It states, and I quote, any heir who publicly humiliates, financially exploits, or attempts to remove Mabel Davenport from her residence shall forfeit their entire inheritance. The courtroom went dead silent. Mrs. Sienna Davenport's actions meet all 3 criteria. Therefore, as of this moment, Gregory Davenport has forfeited his inheritance. The entire estate, valued at approximately $3 million, will be distributed to the charitable organizations specified in the codicil. Sienna stood up so fast her chair fell backward. That's not legal. You can't just sit down, Judge Chen said sharply. Now. Sienna sat. Her hands were shaking. Gregory stared at Martin like he'd been shot. Judge Chen held out her hand. Let me see that codicil. Martin delivered it to the bench. Judge Chen read it carefully, flipping through pages, examining signatures and notary stamps. The silence stretched. Somewhere in the courthouse, a phone rang. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Finally, Judge Chen looked up. This document appears to be in order. Mr. Sullivan, did your client know about this codicil? No, Your Honor. Sullivan's confidence had evaporated. We had no knowledge. Did you conduct due diligence on the estate before filing this petition? We relied on information provided by... That's not what I asked. Sullivan said nothing. Judge Chen turned to Gregory. Mr. Davenport, stand up. Gregory stood on shaky legs. Did you know about this codicil? No, Your Honor. My father never... I didn't know. Did you remove your mother from her bank accounts? A long pause. Yes. Did you cut off her Wi-Fi access? My wife did that, for security. Did you file this petition to gain control of your mother's finances? No. I filed it because I thought... His voice cracked. I thought she needed help. Help? Judge Chen's voice was ice. Or did you need her money? Gregory looked at Sienna, then at me, his eyes filled with tears. I don't know anymore, he whispered. Judge Chen removed her glasses. Here's what I know. This court has seen enough elder abuse cases to recognize the pattern. Isolation, financial control, fabricated medical evidence. This petition is denied, immediately and permanently. She looked at me. Mrs. Davenport, you are free to manage your own affairs. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order against both Gregory and Sienna Davenport. They are not to contact you, approach your residence, or interfere with your life in any way for a period of 1 year. Your Honor, Sullivan tried. I'm not finished. I'm also referring this matter to Adult Protective Services for investigation of elder abuse. And Mr. Sullivan? I suggest you be more careful about the cases you take and the evidence you present to this court. Sullivan sat down heavily. This hearing is adjourned. Judge Chen stood. Mrs. Davenport, you have my sincere apologies for what you've endured. Mr. Thorne, well done. She left. The courtroom erupted. Sienna turned on Gregory. You said there was no codicil. You said we checked everything. I didn't know. Gregory's face was red, tears streaming. Dad never told me. This is your fault. Sienna's voice was shrill. You're incompetent, stupid. No, Gregory said quietly. This is my fault. All of it. He turned to me. Our eyes met across the courtroom. Mom, his voice broke completely. Mom, I'm so sorry. I stood there, frozen. He moved toward me, but the bailiff stepped between us. Sir, there's a restraining order. I just need to... Gregory looked desperate. Mom, please. I didn't understand. I didn't see what she was doing, what I was doing. Martin touched my elbow. Mabel, we should go. But I couldn't move, couldn't speak. Gregory sank into a chair, his head in his hands, shoulders shaking with sobs. Sienna grabbed her phone and purse. I'm done. I'm calling my lawyer. She looked at Gregory with pure contempt. You're pathetic. Your father was right about you. She stormed out, heels clicking on marble. Sullivan gathered his papers quickly and left without a word. Judith stood from the gallery, looked at me with something like shame, and followed Sienna out. It was just Martin and me, Gregory still sobbing at the table, and the bailiff standing awkwardly nearby. Mrs. Davenport? The bailiff asked gently. Do you need anything? I found my voice. No, thank you. Martin guided me toward the door. As we passed Gregory, I stopped. He looked up, his face destroyed. You have 1 year, I said quietly. 1 year to figure out who you really are, without her, without the money, without me. Mom, I loved you from the moment you were born. Your father loved you. We gave you everything. My voice stayed steady, and you tried to erase me. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry isn't enough yet, but maybe in a year it will be. I walked out. In the hallway, reporters were waiting. Cameras, microphones, questions shouted all at once. Mrs. Davenport, how do you feel? Are you suing your daughter-in-law? Do you have a comment on the viral videos? Martin held up his hand. No comment. Please respect Mrs. Davenport's privacy. We pushed through to the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught a final glimpse of the courthouse, the marble columns, the American flag, the place where I'd finally been seen. In the elevator, descending, Martin said, You did it. I leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. What happens now? Now? You live your life. The restraining order is in place. The estate transfers to the charities within 30 days. Your separate account is active. $50,000, available immediately. You're free, Mabel. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. Outside, Portland was bright and cold and beautiful. There's one more thing, Martin said. Media requests. The story has gone national. Every outlet wants to interview you. It's your choice. I thought about Sienna's face when the codicil was read, Gregory's tears, the viral videos, the 200,000 people who'd watched me be humiliated. No interviews, I said. Let the court records speak for themselves. Good choice. We walked out into the October afternoon. The air tasted like rain and possibility. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Grandma? It's Chloe. Dad told me what happened. Can I see you? I miss you. I showed Martin. The restraining order covers Gregory and Sienna, not the grandchildren. I typed back, "Not yet, sweetheart, but soon. I promise." 3 dots appeared. Then, "Okay. I love you." "I love you too." I put the phone away and breathed deeply. Somewhere in the city, Sienna was losing everything. Her followers, her sponsors, her marriage, her life. Somewhere Gregory was realizing what he'd become, and here I was, 65 years old, standing in the autumn sun, finally visible, finally free. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of my new apartment, watching rain streak down the windows. The place was small, a 1-bedroom in the Pearl District, 6th floor, with a view of Powell's Books and the streetcars rumbling past. 800 square feet that belonged entirely to me. No annex, no backyard shed, no main house looming over me with its dark windows and darker intentions. I'd moved out of the annex in November, 2 weeks after the hearing. Martin helped me pack. We filled 17 boxes, most of Roger's things, my clothes, the shoebox of letters. I left behind the furniture Roger had built. Let the charities decide what to do with it. The house had sold in January. A young couple with a baby bought it for $890,000. They had no idea about its history, and I didn't tell them. Let it be happy again. The proceeds went to the 3 charities Roger specified: $800,000 to Parkinson's Research, $750,000 to Veterans Housing, $750,000 to the Portland Food Bank. Martin sent me the confirmation letters. I kept them in a folder labeled Roger's Last Gift. I used the $50,000 from Roger's secret account to start over. First month's rent, deposit, furniture from IKEA and estate sales, a new laptop, a phone plan that actually worked, groceries without checking my account balance first. The rest sat in savings, earning interest. For the first time in my life, I had a cushion, security, freedom. I made coffee and carried it to the small table by the window. The same table Roger and I had refinished in 1984. $20 at a yard sale, now worth everything. My phone buzzed. A text from Dorothy. "Still on for lunch? May's Cafe at noon?" "See you there," I typed back. Dorothy had stuck by me through everything. So had Linda from next door. They'd helped me move, brought wine and sympathy, let me cry on their shoulders when the anger finally turned to grief. I'd made new friends, too. The woman in 6B, Patricia, was 72 and took pottery classes at the community center. She'd convinced me to join her. My first bowl had been lopsided and ugly. My 5th one actually held water. Roger would have been proud. At 11:30, I grabbed my coat and took the elevator down. The lobby smelled like fresh flowers. The building manager changed them every Monday. Outside, Portland was gray and wet and beautiful. I walked the 6 blocks to May's Cafe, umbrella up, boots splashing through puddles. Dorothy was already there, sitting in our usual booth, 2 coffees waiting. "You look good," she said as I slid in across from her. "Really good." "I feel good. Any news?" She meant Gregory. Everyone always meant Gregory. "He sends letters," I said, "every week. I don't always read them right away, but I keep them." The letters had started in December. Short at first, just "I'm sorry," written 50 different ways. Then longer, more honest. He'd moved out of the house before it sold, rented a small apartment in Beaverton. Sienna had filed for divorce in November, citing irreconcilable differences. The process was ugly, expensive, and very public. "She's trying to get custody of Blake and Chloe," Dorothy said. "I saw it in the paper. She won't get it. Gregory's lawyer is good. Martin had recommended him. She's too toxic now. The videos, the elder abuse investigation, everything." Sienna had lost everything. Her follower count had dropped to 200K, mostly hate followers and people watching the train wreck. Every brand deal was gone. She'd tried to rebrand as a redemption story, posting tearful apologies and therapy updates, but the internet had a long memory. Last I'd heard, she'd moved to Sacramento. Started over with a new Instagram account under a fake name. The internet found her in 3 days. "And the kids?" Dorothy asked gently. I smiled. "I'm seeing them tomorrow." That had taken time. 4 months of the restraining order, then carefully negotiated meetings in neutral locations, a park, a museum, always with Martin present as mediator. Blake had been wary at first, defensive of his father. Chloe had cried and apologized for an hour straight. But slowly, carefully, we'd rebuilt something, not what we'd had before. That was gone, burned away by Sienna's cruelty and Gregory's weakness. But something new, something real. Where are you meeting? The zoo, Blake's idea. He remembered I used to take them when they were little. Dorothy squeezed my hand. Roger would be so proud of you. I thought about that later, walking home through the rain. Proud of what? Surviving? Fighting back? Winning? Maybe just proud that I'd refused to disappear. Back at the apartment, I checked my mail. Bills, a pottery class flyer, and a letter from Gregory. I made tea before opening it. Mom, Dr. Reeves says I should be honest in these letters. Really honest, not just apologetic. So here it is. I was weak. I've always been weak. Dad knew it. You probably knew it too. When Sienna came along, she made me feel strong, important, like I mattered. And when she started talking about you, about how you were too dependent, too needy, too much, I believed her because it was easier than standing up to her. I let her humiliate you. I participated. I laughed when she made that comment about the smell, Mom. I laughed. Because I was too cowardly to defend you. Dad left that codicil because he knew I might fail you. And I did. I failed you in every possible way. Blake asked me yesterday why I let Mom treat Grandma so badly. He's 12 years old and he could see what I couldn't, or wouldn't. I didn't have an answer that didn't make me sound pathetic. I know you're seeing the kids tomorrow. Thank you for that. Thank you for not punishing them for my mistakes. They miss you. They talk about you all the time. Chloe asked if she could live with you. I told her that's not possible yet, but maybe someday. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just want you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, what I became. I'm trying to be the man Dad thought I could be, the man you raised me to be. I'm trying. Love, Gregory. I folded the letter carefully and added it to the box I kept in my closet. 47 letters now. I'd read them all eventually, when I was ready. The next morning, I met Blake and Chloe at the Oregon Zoo entrance. Gregory dropped them off, waved from his car, 50 feet away, respecting the restraining order that had 3 more months to run, and drove away. Blake had grown taller, 13 now, all angles and awkward teenage energy. Chloe was 10, still small for her age, wearing the bracelet I'd made her in pottery class. Grandma! Chloe hugged me tight. Blake hung back, then stepped forward and hugged me too. Hey, Grandma, he said quietly. Hey yourself. We spent 3 hours at the zoo, watched the elephants, ate overpriced hot dogs, rode the train around the park. Normal things. Easy things. At the penguin exhibit, Chloe asked, Are you happy now? I thought about my small apartment with its mismatched furniture and view of the bookstore, my pottery classes and lunch dates with Dorothy, my savings account with $31,000 still sitting there, untouched. My life, small and quiet, and entirely mine. Yeah, sweetheart, I am. Good. She slipped her hand into mine. You deserve to be happy. Blake looked at me over her head. We're sorry, Grandma, for everything. I know. It's okay. It's not okay. What Mom did, what Dad let her do. It's over now, I said gently. And you're here. That's what matters. We got ice cream before Gregory came to pick them up. Chloe ordered mint chocolate chip. Blake got Rocky Road. I got butter pecan, Roger's favorite. When Gregory's car pulled up, Chloe hugged me for a long time. Can we do this again next week? She asked. Absolutely. Blake hugged me too. Love you, Grandma. Love you too, sweetheart. I watched them get in the car. Gregory met my eyes through the windshield. He mouthed, Thank you. I nodded once, then they drove away. I walked home slowly, taking the long route through the park. The rain had stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds in golden shafts. My phone buzzed. A text from Martin. Heard the zoo visit went well. It did. Also wanted to let you know, the last charity transfer went through today. Roger's estate is fully settled. All $2, $3 million distributed according to the codicil. I stopped walking and stood there in the middle of the park. $2. $3 million that could have bought a bigger house, luxury vacations, security for decades, all gone to charity because Sienna couldn't control her cruelty and Gregory couldn't find his spine. Thank you, Martin, for everything. Just doing what Roger asked. He was a good man. The best. I put my phone away and continued walking. That evening, I made dinner in my small kitchen. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad, and ate at the table by the window. Below, the streetcars rumbled past. People walked dogs, carried groceries, lived their lives. I pulled out my laptop and opened the folder I'd been working on. A memoir. Martin had suggested it. Your story, he'd said. Other people need to hear it. Other women in your situation. I'd written 73 pages so far. About Roger. About raising Gregory. About the slow erosion of being taken for granted until you're invisible. And about fighting back. I added a new page and started typing. 6 months after the hearing, I can finally see clearly. What I lost. My son. Temporarily. My home. My savings. Years of peace. What I gained? Myself. Roger used to say that being invisible wasn't always bad. Sometimes it meant people underestimated you, overlooked you, forgot you were capable of fighting back. He was right. I wrote until midnight, the city lights glowing below, Roger's wedding ring, which I still wore, catching the lamplight. At 12:30, I saved the document and closed the laptop. Tomorrow I had pottery class, lunch with Patricia from 6B. A call scheduled with Blake to help him with his history homework. Small, ordinary things that added up to a life worth living. I walked to the bedroom, my bedroom, in my apartment, that I paid for with my money, and pulled out the box of Roger's letters one more time. I read the last one again, the one written 2 weeks before he died. You were never invisible to me, Mabel. You were everything. And when I'm gone, don't let them erase you. Fight. You're stronger than you think. Stronger than they'll ever understand. I love you. Always. R. I pressed the letter to my heart and whispered, I fought, Roger. I won. Outside, rain started again, soft against the windows. I turned off the light and went to bed. For the first time in 43 years, I fell asleep in a home that was mine alone. Not lonely, not sad, just mine. And in the morning, I'd wake up and live another day exactly as I chose. Visible, free, unbreakable. The old woman they'd tried to erase had become impossible to ignore, and she wasn't going anywhere. My family kicked me to the streets, called me a thief, and I ended up serving pancakes at a roadside diner in Phoenix. But that old man sitting in booth 7, the one my ex-husband just humiliated, was about to change everything. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. The smell of burnt coffee and bacon grease had become my perfume. 8 months of waking up at 4:30 a.m., tying on a stained apron, and smiling at strangers who left $2 tips on $40 tabs. My name tag said Sam, because Samantha felt like someone else. Someone who used to wear silk blouses and drive a BMW. Someone whose own mother hadn't called her a criminal. I was 32 years old, and I had $847 in my checking account. The diner, Rosie's Route 66, though Rosie had been dead for 15 years, sat on a stretch of highway between Phoenix and Tucson. We got truckers, tourists, and the occasional family arguing about whether to stop at the Grand Canyon. The vinyl booths were cracked. The jukebox hadn't worked since 2019. But the coffee was strong, and the tips were cash, and nobody asked questions about why a woman with a finance degree was refilling ketchup bottles at 6 a.m. I noticed the old man the moment he shuffled through the door. White hair like a dandelion gone to seed. Clothes that looked like they'd been pulled from a donation bin. A flannel shirt with a frayed collar. Khaki pants that were too big. Scuffed brown shoes. He moved slowly, leaning on a wooden cane that had seen better decades. His face was weathered, deep lines carved around his eyes and mouth, but those eyes, pale blue and sharp, they were taking in everything. Morning. I grabbed a menu. Booth or counter? Booth, please. By the window, if you don't mind. His voice was gravelly but polite. I led him to booth 7, the one with the best view of the parking lot and the desert beyond. He settled in with the careful movements of someone whose joints had started betraying him. Black, and whatever pie you'd recommend. Apples fresh, made it myself. A smile crinkled the corners of his eyes. Then apple it is. I brought his coffee and pie, and he thanked me with a nod that felt almost formal. Old-fashioned. He pulled a newspaper from his coat pocket, an actual printed newspaper, the Arizona Republic, and began reading. I liked him immediately. He didn't try to make conversation, didn't stare at my chest, didn't complain about the temperature of his coffee. He just sat there, eating pie and reading about whatever crisis was unfolding in the world. The morning rush came and went. Truckers needing eggs and hash browns before hitting I-10. A family with 3 kids who spilled orange juice everywhere. 2 nurses ending their night shift, exhausted and quiet. I moved between tables on autopilot, refilling cups, clearing plates, calculating tips in my head. It was almost 10 a.m. when the door swung open and I felt my stomach drop. My ex-husband walked in like he owned the place. He was wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. His dark hair slicked back, his jaw set in that expression I used to find confident, and now recognized as arrogant. 2 other men flanked him, colleagues, judging by their similar suits and the way they laughed at something he said. One was tall and bald, the other had the nervous energy of someone trying too hard to impress. Brandon's eyes swept the diner and landed on me. His smile widened into something cruel. Well, well. He strolled toward the counter, his colleagues trailing behind. Look who's moved up in the world. I gripped the coffee pot. What are you doing here, Brandon? Passing through. Got a client meeting in Tucson. He looked around with theatrical disdain. I heard you'd fallen on hard times, Sam, but this is... Wow, this is really something. The bald man snickered. The nervous one looked uncomfortable. I'm working, I said flatly. If you want to order, sit down. If not, the door's behind you. Brandon leaned against the counter. He was close enough that I could smell his cologne. Tom Ford. $350 a bottle, I knew, because I'd bought it for him on our 3rd anniversary. You know, I told your mother about this. She didn't believe me. Said her daughter would never be serving hash browns to truckers. He tilted his head. But here you are. My mother and I don't speak. No, you don't. And whose fault is that? I said nothing. There was nothing to say. He'd won. He and my mother and my brother, they'd all won. They'd taken everything, painted me as the villain, and watched me fall. Anything I said now would just give him more ammunition. Brandon glanced around the diner, his gaze casual, dismissive. It landed on booth 7, on the old man with the newspaper. Fantastic clientele you've got here. Brandon's voice carried, deliberately loud. Very upscale. The old man didn't look up from his paper. Leave the customers alone, I said. But Brandon was already walking toward booth 7, his colleagues following like well-trained dogs. He stopped at the edge of the table, looking down at the old man with that smile that had nothing to do with warmth. Morning, Pops. You lost? The shelter's on 5th Street. The old man lowered his newspaper, those pale blue eyes fixed on Brandon without a trace of fear. I'm exactly where I intend to be. Sure you are. Brandon looked at his colleagues and laughed. Hey, Sam, does he pay in nickels? Or do you let him work off his bill washing dishes? My face burned. Brandon, stop. What? I'm just making conversation. He turned back to the old man. That cane's something else. You find that in a dumpster too? The old man's expression didn't change. It was a gift. Right. Brandon reached down and snatched the cane from where it leaned against the booth. The old man's hand shot out but too slow. Brandon held the cane up, examining it with exaggerated interest. Wow, this is actually kind of nice. Real wood. Carved handle. He looked at the old man. Where'd someone like you get something like this? Please give that back. Please give that back, Brandon mimicked in a whiny voice. His colleagues laughed. Come on, Pops. I'm just looking. Something inside me snapped. Brandon, give him his cane. Now. He ignored me. And then... God, I still can't believe he did it. Brandon kicked the cane. just kicked it across the diner floor like it was garbage. The wooden cane clattered and skidded, coming to rest against the jukebox. The old man tried to stand, but without his support, he stumbled. I rushed forward, catching his arm before he could fall. "Get out," I said to Brandon. My voice was shaking. "Get out of this diner right now." Brandon laughed. "Or what? You'll call the cops? Report me for being mean to a homeless guy?" He straightened his suit jacket. "Face it, Sam. You can't do anything to me. You never could." The front door of the diner burst open. 4 men in black suits entered. They moved with military precision, fanning out, their eyes scanning the room. They weren't cops. Cops didn't wear suits like that, didn't move like that. These men looked like Secret Service. One of them, the leader, was already speaking into his sleeve. "Sir?" The leader addressed the old man. "Are you all right?" The old man straightened, and something shifted. The frail, shuffling vagrant was gone. In his place stood someone else entirely, shoulders back, chin lifted, a cold authority settling over his weathered features like a mask coming off. "I'm fine, Thomas." His voice had changed too, sharper, commanding, though we seemed to have a situation. 2 more men in suits entered through the back. A woman followed, elegant, 50s, carrying a leather briefcase. She surveyed the scene with the calculating gaze of a lawyer who'd seen everything. Brandon's face had gone white. What is this?" The old man retrieved his cane. One of the suits had already picked it up and was handing it to him with a small bow, and walked toward Brandon. Each step was steady now, deliberate. No shuffle, no frailty. "My name," the old man said, "is Arthur Whitmore." Brandon's mouth opened. Closed, opened again. "Whitmore? As in Whitmore Industries, Whitmore Holdings, Whitmore Foundation." The old man's eyes were ice. "I believe you work for one of my subsidiary companies. Harrison Analytics?" Brandon looked like he was going to vomit. "Sir, Mr. Whitmore, I had no idea." "You didn't." Arthur Whitmore stopped directly in front of Brandon. Despite the height difference, Brandon was 6 feet tall. Whitmore was 5'8" at best. There was no question who held the power. You saw an old man in worn clothes, and you made assumptions. You humiliated him. You took his cane and threw it across the room. Whitmore's voice dropped. "And you did it to impress your colleagues and torment that woman." Brandon was trembling. Actually trembling. "Whitmore, I am so sorry. I didn't know. I never would have. Please." "You didn't know," Whitmore repeated. "Tell me, Mr. Mitchell." Brandon Mitchell. "Mitchell, would your behavior have been acceptable if I were actually homeless? If I were actually poor?" Brandon said nothing. Whitmore turned to the woman with the briefcase. "Margaret." She stepped forward, opening the briefcase, producing a document and an expensive pen. "Mitchell, I'm Margaret Chen, Chief Legal Counsel for Whitmore Holdings. This document confirms your termination from Harrison Analytics, effective immediately. It includes a non-disclosure agreement and a release of claims. Sign here, and you'll receive 2 weeks severance. Refuse, and you'll be escorted from the premises of any Whitmore-affiliated property by security, after we've contacted the Arizona Bar Association about your conduct." The bar? I'm not even a lawyer. "No, but your firm's senior partner is. And he'll be very interested to hear how his associates behave when they think no one important is watching." Brandon signed. His hand was shaking so badly the signature was barely legible. "Your colleagues as well," Whitmore said, glancing at the bald man and the nervous one. "Consider this a learning experience." 3 signatures later, 3 men walked out of Rosie's Route 66 diner with their careers in ruins. Brandon didn't look at me. He couldn't. The diner was silent. The other customers, the nurses, a couple of truckers who'd been watching with open mouths, seemed frozen in place. Arthur Whitmore turned to me. Those pale blue eyes, sharp and clear, studied my face. "You defended me," he said, "before you knew who I was." He was being cruel. It didn't matter who you were. No. A small smile crossed his weathered features. It didn't. That's exactly the point. He reached into his pocket and produced a business card. Heavy stock, embossed letters. Whitmore Foundation, Phoenix. "My assistant will call you tomorrow, Miss Reeves." I stared at him. "How do you know my name?" "I know a great deal about you, Samantha." His voice softened. and for a moment he looked tired again, not frail but sad. More than you might think. Your father and I, well, that's a conversation for another time. He walked toward the door, his entourage falling into formation around him. At the threshold, he paused and looked back. The pie really was excellent. And then he was gone. I stood in the middle of the diner, holding a business card worth more than everything I owned, trying to understand what had just happened. My father had been dead for 23 years. He'd served in Vietnam, came home broken, died of a heart attack when I was 9. What could he possibly have to do with a billionaire in a Phoenix diner? The card felt heavy in my hand. The Whitmore Foundation. I'd heard of it. Everyone in Arizona had. They funded hospitals, scholarships, veterans programs. Arthur Whitmore was worth something like $4 billion, though he famously avoided publicity. And he knew my father. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my cramped studio apartment, staring at the water stain on the ceiling, turning that business card over and over in my fingers. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Whitmore Tower, 43rd floor. Dress comfortably. M. Sir Chen. I was either about to get the opportunity of a lifetime, or I was walking into something I didn't understand. With my luck, probably both. Whitmore Tower rose 47 stories above downtown Phoenix, all glass and steel catching the morning sun. I stood on the sidewalk in my best clothes, a gray blouse and black slacks I'd bought at Goodwill 3 months ago, feeling like a fraud. The lobby was marble and chrome, with a security desk that looked more intimidating than most police stations. I gave my name to the guard, and within 30 seconds, a young man in a tailored suit appeared to escort me to a private elevator. "Whitmore is expecting you," he said. Nothing else, no small talk, no explanation. The elevator opened directly onto the 43rd floor. No hallway, no reception area. Just a vast office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The desert stretched beyond, browns and oranges fading into the haze. Arthur Whitmore stood by the window, his back to me. He was dressed differently today. Expensive gray suit, crisp white shirt, but I recognized his posture. Still commanding, still sharp. "Samantha," he turned. "Thank you for coming." "I don't think I had much choice, Mr. Whitmore." A smile flickered across his face. "Arthur, please." He gestured to a pair of leather armchairs arranged near the window. "Sit. We have a great deal to discuss." I sat. He didn't. Instead, he walked to his desk and picked up a photograph in a silver frame. He studied it for a long moment before bringing it to me. "Do you recognize this man?" The photograph was old, faded around the edges. 2 young soldiers in Vietnam-era fatigues stood arm in arm, grinning at the camera. The jungle behind them was dense, green, threatening. One of the soldiers was clearly Arthur Whitmore, younger, leaner, but those same pale eyes. The other, my breath caught. "That's my father, James Reeves, Sergeant First Class, 101st Airborne Division." Arthur's voice was soft. "We served together in 71 and 72. He was my squad leader, my friend, and he saved my life." I looked up at him. "He never mentioned you." He wouldn't have. Arthur sat in the chair across from me. "What happened?" It wasn't something either of us talked about. Ever. He paused. "Do you know how your father came home?" "Not really. He didn't talk about the war. Mom said he saw things he couldn't unsee. He had nightmares until the day he died." Arthur nodded slowly. "January 14th, 1972. Our patrol was ambushed outside a village called Bin Trang. 12 men. Within the first 30 seconds, 6 of them were dead. I took shrapnel in my leg, my back. I couldn't move. The Viet Cong were advancing. Your father..." He stopped. His jaw tightened. "Your father ran back for me, through the fire. He carried me 200 yards to cover, then went back for 2 more wounded men. By the time air support arrived, he'd made that run 4 times. I couldn't speak. My father, the quiet man who'd sat on the porch drinking coffee in the mornings, who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd never once raised his voice, had done that. He received the Silver Star," Arthur continued. "I made sure of it, but the medals never meant anything to him. He just wanted to come home and forget. He died when I was 9. I know. I was at the funeral, in the back. Your mother didn't know me and I didn't want to intrude." Arthur's eyes met mine. "I've been watching your family ever since. Quietly. from a distance, waiting for the right moment to repay a debt that can never truly be repaid. The weight of his words settled over me. 50 years. He'd been watching for 50 years. When I saw what happened to you, Arthur said, when I learned what your family did, I couldn't stay silent anymore. My heart stopped. What do you mean, what my family did? Arthur reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila folder. He set it on the table between us. Your father left a trust, $2,300,000, accumulated through life insurance, investments, and a settlement from the VA. You were the sole beneficiary. The trust was to be released to you on your 30th birthday. I stared at him. That's impossible. There was no trust. My mother said, the folder sat there, innocuous and damning. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to know. But I reached out anyway, opened it, and started reading. The documents were dense with legal language, but the facts were clear enough. James Reeves had established a trust in 1985, 3 years before his death. The sole beneficiary, Samantha Marie Reeves. The trustee, Patricia Reeves, his wife, my mother, until Samantha reached the age of 30. On my 30th birthday, 2 years ago, the trust should have transferred to me. Instead, there was a series of documents, forged signatures, fraudulent withdrawal requests, fabricated expenses. Over the course of 18 months, $2.3 million had been drained from the trust and distributed to 3 accounts: my mother, my brother Kevin, my husband Brandon, ex-husband now, but we'd still been married when it happened. They stole everything, I whispered. Yes, Arthur's voice was steady. And when you started asking questions about the trust, your 30th birthday, you tried to contact your father's old attorney. They panicked. Your brother accused you of embezzling from the family business. Your mother backed him up. Your husband filed for divorce, claiming you'd been hiding assets. I remembered those weeks, the confusion, the accusations that made no sense. My mother screaming at me, calling me ungrateful, demanding to know what I'd done with the money. Kevin showing the police forged documents with my signature. Brandon, my husband of 4 years, standing in our kitchen and saying he didn't know me anymore. They'd destroyed me, deliberately, methodically, to cover up what they'd stolen. I was investigated, I said. The police, your brother has connections. The investigation was closed within 3 weeks. No charges filed against anyone. I closed the folder. My hands were trembling. Why are you telling me this? Arthur stood and walked back to the window. Because it's time for the truth, and because I have the resources to help you get justice. Justice? The word tasted bitter. My family stole my inheritance and made me a pariah. I lost everything. My home, my career, my reputation. My own mother won't return my calls. And you think justice is possible? I think it's inevitable. Arthur turned to face me. Here's what I'm proposing. My legal team will investigate. We have forensic accountants, private investigators, attorneys who specialize in fraud cases. We'll build a case so airtight that no connection your brother has will be able to make it disappear. And what do you want in return? Nothing. He paused. Well, one thing. I want to know that James Reeves's daughter got what was owed to her. That his legacy didn't end in betrayal and lies. I didn't trust it. Couldn't trust it. Nothing in my life had been given freely. Every gift had strings. But what choice did I have? Okay, I said. Where do we start? Arthur smiled. The first genuine smile I'd seen from him. We start with Brandon Mitchell. The investigation moved faster than I'd imagined possible. Margaret Chen, Arthur's legal counsel, assigned a team of 6 people to my case. Within 48 hours, they had subpoenaed bank records, obtained copies of the trust documents, and begun interviewing witnesses. Brandon, it turned out, was the weak link. He's terrified, Margaret told me 3 days later. We were in a conference room on the 41st floor, documents spread across the table. The termination from Harrison Analytics was just the beginning. Our investigators found irregularities in his financial records going back years, tax fraud, securities violations. He's facing potential federal charges that have nothing to do with your family's theft. I looked at the evidence laid out before me. Bank statements showing transfers from my trust to accounts in Brandon's name, emails between Brandon and Kevin discussing the inheritance problem, a recorded phone call, obtained through means Margaret didn't explain, in which my mother told Brandon to make sure Samantha never finds out. My own mother, planning my destruction. We have enough to approach Brandon with a deal, Margaret continued. He cooperates, testifies against your mother and brother, and we don't pursue the federal charges ourselves. We let him take his chances with the IRS instead of adding our weight to the case. You want him to flip? I want him to sing. Margaret's smile was thin. A man like Brandon will do anything to save himself. The question is whether you can stomach working with him. I thought about it. 4 years of marriage. The way he'd smiled at our wedding. The way he'd held my hand when we walked through our first apartment. All of it a lie. All of it building toward this moment. Him standing in our kitchen, divorce papers in hand, telling me I'd brought this on myself. Make the deal, I said. Brandon met with Margaret's team the next day. I watched through a one-way mirror as he sat at a conference table, sweating through his expensive shirt, while 2 attorneys laid out exactly how much trouble he was in. He broke within an hour. It was Patricia's idea, he said, his voice cracking. Patricia and Kevin. They came to me 6 months before Samantha's 30th birthday. Said there was money, a lot of money, and that if we worked together, we could all benefit. He wiped his forehead. I didn't even know about the trust until then. Samantha never mentioned it. Because she didn't know, Margaret said flatly. Right. Brandon nodded rapidly. Patricia controlled everything. She'd been bleeding the trust for years, small amounts, but it wasn't enough. Kevin's business was failing. I had debts. We needed the full amount. So you forged documents. Kevin did most of that. He has a guy, I don't know his name, who can replicate signatures. We created withdrawal requests, transfer orders, made it look like Samantha had authorized everything. And when she started asking questions, Brandon's face crumpled. Patricia panicked. She said we had to discredit Samantha before anyone believed her. Kevin planted evidence of embezzlement at his company. He stopped. I filed for divorce, made accusations about hidden assets. We all told the same story. You destroyed an innocent woman to cover your theft. I know. His voice was barely a whisper. I know what we did. I've known from the beginning. But Patricia, you don't understand what she's like. She doesn't forgive. She doesn't forget. When Kevin and I suggested maybe we'd gone too far, she said she'd burn us both before she'd let Samantha take anything that was hers. I stepped back from the mirror. My legs felt weak. My mother, not a victim of bad decisions or desperate circumstances, an architect of cruelty. She hadn't been protecting herself. She'd been eliminating me. Margaret emerged from the conference room 30 minutes later. Her expression was unreadable. We have enough, she said. Signed statements, documented evidence, and Brandon's agreement to testify. I can have your mother and brother arrested by the end of the week. Arrested. My mother in handcuffs. My brother in a holding cell. The family that had raised me, celebrated holidays with me, told me they loved me, facing criminal charges because of what they'd done. I should have felt triumph. I felt hollow. There's something else, Margaret said. She hesitated. The first time I'd ever seen her uncertain. Brandon mentioned that Patricia has been making plans, moving assets. He thinks she suspects something is coming. What kind of plans? He doesn't know specifically. But he said she's been meeting with a man named Gerald Foster. He's a specialist in offshore accounts, the kind of specialist people use when they're planning to disappear. My mother wasn't just a thief. She was planning to run. And if she ran before we could stop her, she'd take whatever was left of my inheritance and any chance of justice with her. That night, I sat in Arthur's office as his team worked through the implications. The sun had set hours ago. The city glittered below us, indifferent to the drama unfolding 43 floors above. We need to move faster, Margaret said. If Patricia liquidates her assets and leaves the country, extradition becomes exponentially more complicated. How long do we have? Arthur asked. Days, maybe less. Brandon said she mentioned a trip to the Cayman Islands next week. That's not a vacation. Arthur turned to me. Samantha, this is your decision. We can proceed cautiously, build an airtight case, and risk your mother disappearing. Or we can move now, arrest her before she can run, and take our chances with a less complete case. I looked at the photograph on his desk. My father, young and smiling, his arm around the man who would become a billionaire. He'd run through fire to save his friends. He'd never asked for recognition. He'd just done what was right. Move now, I said, before she can hurt anyone else. Arthur nodded, picked up the phone. Thomas, initiate contact with the FBI. Tell them we have evidence of wire fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. And tell them the suspects may be fleeing the country. He hung up and met my eyes. It begins tomorrow. The FBI moved at 5:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I wasn't there for the arrests. Margaret had been very clear about that. But I watched the aftermath unfold from a conference room at Whitmore Tower, surrounded by screens showing news footage and live feeds from unmarked surveillance vehicles. My mother's house first, the Colonial in Scottsdale where I'd grown up, with the rose garden she'd planted when I was 6, and the oak tree Kevin and I used to climb. 6 agents in tactical vests approached the front door while 4 more covered the back. The door opened. My mother stood there in a silk bathrobe, coffee cup in hand, her face shifting from confusion to fury to something I'd never seen before. They let her out in handcuffs. She was screaming. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew the tone. Indignation. Outrage. How dare they? Don't they know who I am? The neighbors were already emerging from their homes, phones out, recording everything. Kevin's apartment next. A high-rise in downtown Phoenix, the kind of place a successful businessman would live. Except Kevin's business had been failing for years, propped up by stolen money and creative accounting. He came out quietly, head down, shoulders slumped. He looked smaller than I remembered. Brandon was already in custody, cooperating, giving statements, signing documents. The deal Margaret had offered, testimony in exchange for reduced charges, had turned him into the prosecution's star witness. He would face consequences, but nothing like what awaited my mother and brother. The initial charges are wire fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit theft, Margaret explained, her voice calm and professional. Based on Brandon's testimony and the financial records, we expect additional charges to follow: tax evasion, money laundering, possibly elder financial abuse, given that your mother was the trustee of your father's estate. Elder financial abuse. The trust had been established for me, but technically, my father had been the one who'd earned that money, who'd suffered for it, who'd died before he could see it protect his daughter. My mother had violated his wishes, his legacy. What happens now? I asked. Arraignment within 48 hours. Your mother will almost certainly request bail. Given her financial resources and the evidence of flight risk, Gerald Foster, the Cayman Islands, I'd recommend the prosecution argue for denial. And if they grant bail? Margaret's expression didn't change. Then we monitor her very carefully. The arraignment took place Thursday morning. I sat in the back of the courtroom, wearing sunglasses and a hat, trying to be invisible. Margaret had advised against attending, but I needed to see it. Needed to see my mother in an orange jumpsuit, her wrists cuffed, her perfectly maintained facade crumbling. She spotted me anyway. Those sharp eyes, the ones I'd inherited, swept the courtroom and found me in seconds. The look she gave me wasn't anger or betrayal or even hatred. Pure, undiluted contempt, as if I were something beneath her, as if everything she'd done, the theft, the lies, the destruction of my life, had been my fault, as if I deserved it. I held her gaze until she looked away. The judge denied bail. Flight risk, substantial assets, evidence of plans to leave the country. My mother would wait for trial in the Maricopa County Jail. Kevin, too, was denied. The judge noted that he'd been instrumental in facilitating his mother's schemes. As they led her out, my mother turned one last time. "This isn't over, Samantha," she called. "You think you've won? You don't know anything. You never did." The bailiffs pulled her through the door. It slammed shut behind her. I sat in the empty courtroom for a long time after everyone left. The question haunted me. My mother wasn't the type to make empty threats. If she said I didn't know something, she meant it. There was another layer to this story, something I hadn't uncovered yet. I called Margaret from the car. I need access to everything, I said. Every document, every email, every financial record. There's something else going on. Something my mother thinks will change things. Samantha, the case is solid. Brandon's testimony alone. She was too confident. Even in handcuffs, she was too confident. There's something we're missing. A long pause. I'll have the files sent to your apartment. The files arrived that evening. 12 boxes of documents covering 20 years of my family's finances. Bank statements, tax returns, business records, personal correspondence. I spread them across my apartment floor and began reading. At 2 a.m., I found it. A letter, dated 3 months before my 30th birthday. My mother had written it to Kevin, complaining about the situation with James's money. Most of it was what I expected: greed, entitlement, resentment that my father had left everything to me instead of her. But one paragraph stopped me cold. She doesn't deserve any of it. She's not even James's real daughter. I've kept the secret for 32 years, and I'll keep it forever if I have to. That money belongs to this family, to us, not to some stranger's child. I read it again, and again. The words didn't change. Not James's real daughter, some stranger's child. My father, the man in the photograph, the hero who'd run through fire, the quiet presence who'd held me when I had nightmares, wasn't my biological father. I called Arthur at 3 a.m. He answered on the second ring, alert, as if he'd been waiting. I found something, I said. I need to see you. Now. Whitmore Tower was nearly empty at that hour. A skeleton security crew, cleaners working the lower floors, the hum of climate control systems maintaining perfect temperatures for no one. Arthur met me in his office, still dressed in a suit, a cup of coffee already waiting for me. I showed him the letter. His face didn't change as he read it, but something shifted in his eyes. Something heavy. You knew, I said. You knew I wasn't his biological daughter. Arthur set the letter down carefully. Yes, since 1972. He moved to the window, his back to me. Your mother had an affair. It started while James was deployed. By the time he came home, she was pregnant. She told him the baby was his and he believed her, wanted to believe her, because he loved her and he wanted a family. My legs gave out. I sank into the nearest chair. Who was he? My biological father. A man named Richard Holloway. He was a sales representative who traveled through the area regularly. The affair lasted about 6 months. When your mother found out she was pregnant, she ended things with Richard and convinced James the baby was his. Did Richard know? About me? Arthur turned. He died in 1989. Car accident. He never knew he had a daughter. I pressed my hands against my eyes, trying to stop the room from spinning. My entire life, everything I thought I knew about myself, was a lie. My mother's lie. James knew, Arthur continued quietly. Not at first, but later. When you were about 5, he ran into Richard at a conference, saw the resemblance. He confronted your mother and she admitted everything. He stayed. Because he loved you. Because as far as he was concerned, you were his daughter. Blood didn't matter. He raised you, cared for you, left his entire legacy to you. Arthur's voice hardened. And your mother used that love against him. She knew he'd never abandon you, so she knew she could do whatever she wanted. Have affairs, spend money, manipulate everyone around her. James suffered in silence because he couldn't bear to lose you. I thought about my father's eyes in those final years. The sadness I'd attributed to war trauma. The way he'd sometimes look at my mother with an expression I couldn't name. Now I could name it. Resignation. The look of a man trapped by his own decency. The trust, I said slowly. He left everything to me specifically. Not to my mother, not to Kevin. Kevin is your mother's son from before her marriage to James. James adopted him legally, but he always knew Kevin wasn't committed to the family the way you were. The trust was his way of ensuring you'd be protected, that his legacy would go to the daughter he chose, even if biology hadn't. The daughter he chose. I started crying. Not dramatic sobs, just tears sliding down my face, unstoppable. My father had known the truth and loved me anyway, had sacrificed his own happiness to protect me, and my mother had repaid that sacrifice by stealing everything he'd left behind. "Does this change the case?" I asked when I could speak again. "No." Arthur sat across from me. "The trust was established for Samantha Reeves, James's legal daughter. Your mother's fraud, the forged documents, the conspiracy, none of that changes because of the circumstances of your birth. If anything, it makes her crimes worse. She didn't just steal from you. She betrayed a man who gave up everything for her. She'll use it, though, in court. She'll try to argue that I wasn't entitled to the inheritance. She can try. She'll fail." Arthur's voice was certain. James's intentions were clear. His will, his trust documents, his letters, everything specifies that Samantha Reeves is his heir. Biological parentage doesn't factor into legal inheritance when there's a clear written record. I wiped my eyes. I need to know more. About Richard Holloway, about my mother's affairs, about all of it. She's going to use this against me. I need to understand everything before she can weaponize it. Arthur nodded slowly. Then we dig deeper. But Samantha, he paused. Some truths, once uncovered, can't be unknown. Are you prepared for what else we might find? I thought about the woman in the courtroom, the contempt in her eyes, the threats that weren't quite threats. I've already lost everything she could take from me, I said. Whatever's left is just information. Arthur reached for his phone. Margaret, wake the investigators. We have new parameters for the research. He looked at me as he spoke. Find everything there is to know about Patricia Reeves. Every secret, every lie, every person she's ever betrayed. If your mother wants to make this about secrets, he said, then we'll make sure hers are exposed first. The secrets, it turned out, went deeper than anyone imagined. But I wouldn't learn that until the next morning, when Margaret arrived with a file marked Confidential, Multiple Homicide Investigation, and everything I thought I knew about my mother shattered completely. Margaret set the file on the conference table like it might explode. "This came from a contact in the FBI's cold case division," she said. "I want to be clear. None of this has been officially connected to your mother. But the patterns?" I opened the file. The first page was a missing persons report from 1996. A woman named Eleanor Barnes, 67 years old, from Tucson. She disappeared without a trace. No body, no evidence of foul play, just gone. "I don't understand," I said. "What does this have to do with my mother?" The next document was a property record. Eleanor Barnes had owned a house in Tucson, valued at $340,000 in 1996. 3 months after her disappearance, the house was sold. The buyer, Patricia Reeves. My mother had bought a missing woman's house. "It gets worse," Margaret said. More documents. More missing persons reports. 3 women over a period of 8 years, all elderly, all living alone, all with substantial assets. All disappeared without explanation. And in each case, within months of the disappearance, a property or bank account connected to the victim had been acquired by someone in my mother's network. A shell company, a business associate, once, by Kevin directly. Eleanor Barnes, Martha Donovan, Catherine Price. Margaret listed the names like a eulogy. All presumed dead. No bodies ever found. No suspects ever identified. The cases went cold years ago. I stared at the files, at the photographs of smiling elderly women who'd vanished into nothing. "You think my mother killed them? I think there's a pattern that warrants investigation." Margaret's voice was careful. "I think your mother has connections to 3 unsolved disappearances, all involving vulnerable women with assets she subsequently acquired, and I think the FBI is very interested in exploring that connection." The room felt cold. I'd known my mother was a thief, a liar, a manipulator. But murder? "There's more," Margaret continued. She pulled out another document, a transcript of a recorded conversation. "This was obtained during the Brandon Mitchell interrogation. It's from a phone call between your mother and Kevin, made 2 years ago, approximately 1 week before your 30th birthday. Kevin: Mom, are you sure about this? Sam's going to ask questions eventually. She's not stupid. Patricia: She won't ask questions if she's too busy defending herself. We've done this before, Kevin. We know how to handle problems. Kevin: This is different. She's family. Patricia: Family doesn't mean anything. James taught me that. You give everything to someone, and they still find ways to disappoint you. Sam is no different than Eleanor or Martha or Catherine. She's an obstacle. And we know how to handle obstacles. Kevin. That was years ago. We were desperate then. Patricia. We're desperate now. The trust releases in a week. If we don't act, we lose everything. Are you with me or not? Kevin. Long pause. I'm with you. I'm always with you. Patricia. Good. Then we handle this the same way we handled the others. Make her disappear. Not physically, just socially. Destroy her credibility. Make sure no one believes a word she says. By the time she figures out what happened, it'll be too late. I set the transcript down. My hands were shaking. She compared me to them, I said. To the women who disappeared. She said they handled those problems the same way. The FBI is reopening all 3 cases, Margaret said. Based on this transcript and the financial connections, they have grounds for a full investigation. Your mother may be facing charges far more serious than fraud. I thought about Eleanor Barnes, 67 years old, living alone. Probably trusted the wrong person. Let them into her life. Never saw the danger until it was too late. That could have been me. If my mother had decided physical disappearance was easier than social destruction, I might be buried somewhere in the desert. Another cold case. Another name in a file. What do we do? I asked. Arthur spoke for the first time. He'd been standing by the window, listening, his face unreadable. We coordinate with the FBI, he said. Provide them with everything we have. Financial records, testimony, the connection between your family's sudden wealth and these disappearances. And we prepare for the possibility that this case is about to become much larger than anyone anticipated. My mother will fight back, I said. She's not going to let this happen quietly. She won't. Arthur turned to face me. Which is why we need to move carefully. Your mother still has allies, money hidden in places we haven't found, people who owe her favors or share her secrets. If we're going to ensure she faces justice, real justice for everything she's done, we need to be prepared for every contingency. Margaret nodded. I've already reached out to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Given the scope of potential charges, they're considering taking over the prosecution. Federal resources, federal investigators, federal prison if convicted. Federal prison. My mother in a cell for the rest of her life. For fraud, for conspiracy, possibly for murder. Was that what I wanted? I looked at the photographs of Eleanor Barnes, Martha Donovan, Catherine Price. Women who'd had lives, families, hopes for the future. Women whose deaths, if they were dead, had never been acknowledged, never been mourned properly, because no one knew what had happened to them. That was what I wanted. Do it, I said, whatever it takes. The next 2 weeks were a controlled explosion of activity. FBI agents interviewed Brandon again, this time about anything he knew regarding the missing women. He claimed ignorance, and I believed him. Brandon was greedy and weak, but I didn't think he had the stomach for murder. But he provided more information about my mother's business dealings, her associates, her habits. Forensic accountants traced the money. The pattern was clear. Each of the 3 missing women had been wealthy, isolated, and childless. Perfect targets. Within months of their disappearances, their assets had been quietly absorbed into my mother's network through shell companies and fraudulent transfers. The amounts were staggering. Eleanor Barnes's estate had been worth $1.2 million, Martha Donovan's $890,000, Catherine Price's almost $2 million. Combined with my father's trust, my mother had stolen more than $6 million over 2 decades, and she'd done it without anyone noticing, without anyone questioning, without anyone caring enough about 3 elderly women to dig deeper. Arthur's team found something else, too. A storage unit in Mesa, registered to one of my mother's shell companies. Inside, boxes of documents, photographs, and personal effects that had belonged to the missing women, trophies. My mother had kept trophies. The FBI obtained a warrant. They found Eleanor Barnes's wedding ring in a velvet pouch, tucked between old tax returns and insurance documents. DNA testing confirmed it had been worn by Eleanor. The ring had never been reported missing because no one had known to look for it. My mother's attorney tried to explain it away. A coincidence. A purchase from an estate sale. There was no evidence that Patricia Reeves had ever met Eleanor Barnes, much less harmed her. But the pieces were falling into place. And my mother, sitting in her cell in Maricopa County, was starting to realize that the walls were closing in. She requested a meeting. With me. Alone. Absolutely not, Margaret said immediately. It's a manipulation tactic. She wants to intimidate you, threaten you, find out what you know. I know what she wants, I said, and I want to look her in the eye when I tell her it's over. Arthur studied me for a long moment. Are you sure? She spent 32 years lying to me. Lying about my father, lying about my identity, lying about everything. I need her to know that I see her, all of her, the real her, not the mask she wore for my whole life. The meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon. I spent the days leading up to it preparing, not just emotionally, but strategically. Margaret and I reviewed every piece of evidence, every connection, every argument my mother might try to make. She'll try to gaslight you, Margaret warned, make you doubt what you know, make you feel like you're the one who's wrong. She's been doing that my whole life. It won't work anymore. She might threaten you, claim she has information that could hurt you, destroy you. The only secret she had was my parentage, and that doesn't change anything legally. She might try to make a deal, offer to return some of the money in exchange for you dropping the case. I laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. She can't return what she's already spent, and even if she could, it wouldn't bring back Eleanor Barnes. Friday arrived. I dressed carefully, professional, composed, armored. Margaret drove me to the jail. Arthur wanted to come, but I asked him to wait. This was something I needed to do myself. The visitation room was gray and sterile, plastic chairs bolted to the floor, a table with scratches and stains that had stories I didn't want to know. My mother was already there when they brought me in, wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hair unwashed, her face bare of makeup for the first time I could remember. She looked old, not elderly. She was only 64, but diminished. The power she'd always projected, the control she'd always maintained, had evaporated inside these walls. Samantha, her voice was hoarse. Thank you for coming. I sat across from her, said nothing. I know you think you understand what's happening, she continued, but you don't. You've been manipulated, sweetheart. Arthur Whitmore, his lawyers, they're using you. They want our family's money, our reputation. The word cut through her speech like a blade. She blinked. I know everything, I said. The trust, the forged documents, Kevin and Brandon and Gerald Foster and the Cayman Islands. I know about Richard Holloway. I know Dad wasn't my biological father. I leaned forward. And I know about Eleanor Barnes, Martha Donovan, Catherine Price. For the first time in my life, I saw my mother's composure crack completely. Real fear, naked and undisguised, flickered across her face. You don't know what you're talking about. We found the storage unit, Mother. We found Eleanor's wedding ring. The FBI is reopening all 3 cases. They're going to find those women, what's left of them, and when they do, you're going to spend the rest of your life in a federal prison. She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, harder, the mask she'd worn my whole life finally falling away. Your father was weak, she said. James, he loved you so much he couldn't see what you really were. A burden, a reminder of my mistake. I kept you because it was useful, not because I wanted you. I didn't flinch. I'd expected this. Those women were dying anyway, she continued. Alone, forgotten, wasting away in empty houses. I gave them purpose. Their money built something. It meant something. It meant you could buy a bigger house, send Kevin to private school, maintain the lifestyle you thought you deserved. I did deserve it. Her eyes blazed. I spent my whole life taking care of other people. Your father with his nightmares and his guilt, Kevin with his failures and his needs, you with your questions and your expectations. I was owed something for all of that. You were owed nothing. I stood, and now you'll get exactly what you deserve. I walked to the door, knocked for the guard. Samantha. Her voice stopped me. I turned. My mother was smiling. That thin, cruel smile I remembered from my childhood. The one that meant she knew something you didn't. You think you've won, she said. But you don't know about Eleanor's daughter. You don't know what really happened. And when that truth comes out, and it will, you'll wish you'd never started this. The guard opened the door. I walked out without looking back. But her words echoed in my mind the whole drive home. What truth was still waiting to be found? The words wouldn't leave me alone. I'd assumed Eleanor Barnes was childless. The missing persons report said so, and childless victims had been part of my mother's pattern. But my mother had smiled when she said it, that specific smile that meant she was holding a card I couldn't see. I called Margaret that night. Eleanor Barnes, I said. The report says she had no children. Are we sure that's accurate? A pause. I'll have the investigators verify. The answer came the next morning. Eleanor Barnes had, in fact, had a daughter, born in 1952, given up for adoption at birth. Eleanor had been 19, unmarried, and her family had insisted. The adoption had been closed, the record sealed, and Eleanor had never spoken publicly about the child she'd lost. But she'd searched for her. For 40 years, Eleanor had hired private investigators, submitted DNA samples to databases, followed every lead. The search had consumed her, and her money. By the time she disappeared in 1996, she'd spent over $200,000 trying to find a daughter who'd been raised by another family under another name. Did she find her? I asked. Margaret's voice was careful. That's where it gets complicated. According to Eleanor's financial records, she received a letter 3 weeks before her disappearance. The letter isn't in the files, but there's a notation. Reunion scheduled, finally. She'd found her daughter. Who was it? Who did she find? We're still working on that. The adoption records from 1952 are sealed, and getting them opened requires a court order. But Samantha, Margaret hesitated. Your mother mentioned Eleanor's daughter as if it were relevant to you, as if there's a connection. I felt cold. You think my mother knew the daughter? I think your mother knows things we haven't uncovered yet, and I think we need to find out what before she can use it against you. The court order came through 48 hours later. Arthur's legal team had pulled every string available, citing the murder investigation and the urgent need for information. The sealed adoption records from 1952 were delivered to Margaret's office in a manila envelope. I was there when she opened it. The documents were old, the paper yellowed and brittle. The language was formal, clinical, describing the relinquishment of parental rights by Eleanor Marie Barnes, age 19, for a female infant born on March 14, 1952. The adoptive parents were listed as Harold and Mary Holloway of Tucson, Arizona. I grabbed the file, read it again, and again. Richard Holloway, I said. My biological father. His parents adopted Eleanor Barnes's daughter in 1952. Margaret was already on the phone, calling the investigators. 20 minutes later, we had the full picture. Richard Holloway had been raised with a sister named Susan. According to the adoption records, Susan Holloway had been born on March 14, 1952, and adopted by Harold and Mary Holloway as an infant. She'd grown up in Tucson, married young, had 2 children, and lived a quiet life. Susan Holloway was Eleanor Barnes's biological daughter, and Richard Holloway, the man who'd had an affair with my mother, the man who was my biological father, had been Susan's adoptive brother, which meant Eleanor Barnes, the woman my mother had almost certainly murdered, was connected to my family in ways no one had imagined. Your mother knew, Margaret said. She must have known. The connection between Richard and Susan, between Eleanor and the Holloway family, she knew all of it. But why would that matter? I was still trying to process the implications. Why would my mother care about Eleanor Barnes's connection to Richard? Because of the inheritance, Margaret said slowly. Eleanor was searching for her daughter. She'd spent a fortune trying to find Susan. When she finally located her, she probably planned to leave her estate to Susan, her biological child. And my mother was already stealing from Eleanor by then. Exactly. If Eleanor had lived to change her will, Susan would have inherited everything. Your mother would have lost access to over $1 million in assets. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. My mother had discovered the connection between Eleanor and Richard. She'd realized that Eleanor's search for her daughter threatened her scheme, so she'd made Eleanor disappear, permanently, before she could reconnect with Susan and change her estate plans. And then, years later, my mother had had an affair with Richard Holloway, Eleanor's daughter's adoptive brother, a man whose family had unknowingly been touched by my mother's crimes. Does Susan know? I asked. Does she know her biological mother was murdered? We need to tell her, Margaret said, and we need to find out if she knows anything else, anything that might help the case. Susan Holloway, now Susan Patterson, was 72 years old, living in a retirement community in Sedona. Margaret arranged a meeting, explaining only that we had information about her biological mother's disappearance. Susan agreed immediately. We drove to Sedona that afternoon. The retirement community was beautiful. Red rock formations rising in the distance, manicured gardens, cheerful staff members greeting residents by name. Susan met us in a private sitting room, her white hair neatly styled, her hands clutching a cup of tea. I've waited almost 30 years for someone to tell me what happened to her, she said. I found out about Eleanor just a few weeks before she vanished. We were supposed to meet. I drove to Tucson, went to her house, and she was just gone. I let Margaret do the talking, explaining the investigation, the financial connections, the evidence pointing toward my mother as the person responsible for Eleanor's disappearance. Susan listened without interrupting. Tears rolled down her cheeks, silent and steady. I knew, she said when Margaret finished. I knew in my heart that someone had taken her. Eleanor was so excited to meet me. She'd spent her whole life looking. She wouldn't have just vanished. I'm so sorry, I said, for what my mother did, for all of it. Susan's eyes found mine. You're Patricia's daughter, but you're not like her. It wasn't a question. You're here, telling me the truth, trying to get justice for a woman you never knew. She deserved better. They all did. Susan reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip was firm despite her age. Your mother visited me, she said, about a year after Eleanor disappeared. She said she was a friend of Richard's, wanted to offer her condolences about his death. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Her voice hardened. Now I realize she was checking, making sure I didn't know anything that could threaten her. Did she say anything else? She asked about Eleanor, whether I'd ever found her, whether I knew anything about her estate. I told her I'd never met Eleanor, that she'd disappeared before we could meet. Susan's eyes narrowed. She seemed relieved. At the time, I thought she was just being sympathetic. Now I understand what that relief really meant. Margaret made notes. Susan's testimony was circumstantial, but it established that my mother had been aware of Susan's existence and had actively monitored whether she'd discovered anything about Eleanor. There's one more thing, Susan said. She stood and walked to a bookshelf, retrieving a small wooden box. Eleanor sent this to me a week before she disappeared. I think she knew something was wrong. She wanted me to have it, just in case. She opened the box. Inside was a USB drive, ancient by current standards, probably from the mid-90s, and a handwritten letter. I've never been able to read the drive, Susan said. The technology is too old, but the letter haunts me. She handed it to me. Eleanor's handwriting was elegant, flowing. If you're reading this, something has happened to me. There's a woman, Patricia Reeves, who has been watching me, following me. I've tried to tell the police, but they think I'm a paranoid old woman. I don't have proof, but I believe Patricia has done this before. To other women like me, alone, vulnerable, with money she wants. I've documented everything I know on this drive. Bank records, photographs, dates, and times when I saw her near my house. It may not be enough, but it's something. I'm so sorry we never got to meet. I've loved you my whole life, even when I didn't know your name. Your mother, Eleanor. My hands were trembling when I finished reading. Eleanor had known. She'd known my mother was coming for her, and she'd tried to leave evidence behind. We need to get this drive analyzed, Margaret said, her voice tight. If Eleanor documented Patricia's surveillance, that's premeditation. That's first-degree murder. Susan handed over the drive without hesitation. Find out what happened to her. Find out where she is. I want to bring her home. We drove back to Phoenix in silence. The USB drive sat in Margaret's briefcase like a bomb waiting to go off. The technicians worked through the night. The drive was corrupted, degraded by time, but not beyond recovery. By morning, they'd extracted the files, photographs, documents, and a single audio recording. I listened to the recording with Arthur and Margaret in the conference room at Whitmore Tower. Eleanor's voice, older and slightly wavering, filled the room. This is Eleanor Barnes. The date is March 3rd, 1996. I'm recording this because I'm afraid. Patricia Reeves has been watching my house. I've seen her car parked on my street 4 times this week. She approached me at the grocery store yesterday, pretending to bump into me accidentally, but I recognized her. She's the same woman who called me 3 months ago, claiming to be a financial advisor. I believe Patricia is responsible for Martha's disappearance. Martha Donovan was my friend, and she vanished 2 years ago under similar circumstances. Same pattern, a woman approaching her, offering help with her finances, and then nothing. Martha was never found. I've gathered everything I could find: bank records showing suspicious transactions, photographs of Patricia near my house, a list of other women in the area who've disappeared over the past decade. If something happens to me, please give this to the police. Please don't let her get away with it. I just want to see my daughter. That's all I want. Please. The recording ended. Arthur reached over and stopped the playback. The room was silent. She knew, I said. She knew everything, and my mother killed her anyway. We have enough, Margaret said. Eleanor's recording, the financial evidence, Brandon's testimony, the items from the storage unit. We have enough to charge Patricia Reeves with murder. I looked at the window. The sun was rising over Phoenix, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Then, let's end this, I said. Once and for all. The next morning, federal agents arrived at Maricopa County Jail with a warrant for Patricia Reeves's arrest on 3 counts of first-degree murder. I wasn't there to see it, but Margaret was. She told me my mother didn't scream or cry or protest. That same thin, cruel smile she'd worn my whole life. She said something as they let her out, Margaret told me later. She said, "Tell Samantha this isn't over. Tell her I still have secrets. Tell her the truth about her father, her real father, is worse than she can imagine." I didn't believe her. I couldn't believe her anymore. Every word from her mouth was designed to manipulate, to control, to wound. But late that night, alone in my apartment, I wondered, what truth was she still hiding, and how much more damage could it cause? The trial lasted 4 weeks. I attended every day, sitting in the gallery behind the prosecution table, watching my mother's life dismantled piece by piece. The evidence was overwhelming. Eleanor's recording, the financial records, Brandon's testimony, the items from the storage unit. The defense tried to argue contamination, coercion, circumstantial connections. None of it stuck. On the 15th day, the FBI announced they'd found remains. A construction crew excavating land for a new development in the desert east of Tucson had uncovered human bones. DNA testing confirmed what we'd suspected. Eleanor Barnes, Martha Donovan, and Catherine Price had all been buried within a quarter mile of each other, in shallow graves marked by nothing but sagebrush and stone. They'd been there for decades, waiting to be found, waiting for someone to care enough to look. Susan Patterson flew in from Sedona for the identification. She was quiet, composed. But I saw her hands shake when the medical examiner confirmed that the remains included a small gold locket, Eleanor's locket, the one she'd worn in every photograph from her adult life. "She can come home now," Susan said. Her voice cracked. Finally. My mother showed no emotion when the discovery was announced in court. She sat